117 people disappeared from Roanoke Island in 1587. No bodies, no graves. Just one word carved into wood. There is a map in the British Museum that no one fully examined for over 400 years. 2 small pieces of paper were glued to its surface. When researchers finally looked beneath them, they didn't find a mistake. They found where the colony may have gone. The map is called La Virginea Pars, the official cartographic record of England's earliest colonial reach along the North American coastline. John White painted it during the 1585-86 expedition, and it became the most accurate rendering of the Carolina coast that Europe had ever seen. It documented rivers, native villages, inlets, and depths. It was the kind of map a queen frames and a rival nation steals. On its surface, 2 small patches of paper sit over 2 unremarkable areas. For centuries, historians assumed they were corrections, an artist patching over errors, nothing more. I found this map while researching something else entirely. I was tracking the founding of Jamestown backward through primary sources, trying to understand why England chose the Chesapeake over the Carolina coast, and I kept running into references to a 1587 colony that had simply ceased to exist. The lost colony, Roanoke. I assumed I knew the story. A carved word, 117 missing people, an unsolvable mystery. That is what most of us were taught, and most of us accepted it. I did too. But then I found the 2012 announcement from the First Colony Foundation and the British Museum. And I need to be honest about what it did to me when I read it. It made this story stranger, not simpler. Because what was hidden beneath that blank patch on White's map was not an error. It was a destination. Here is what the documented record actually tells us. On July 22, 1587, 117 men, women, and children arrived at Roanoke Island off the coast of present-day North Carolina. They had sailed from England on May 8th. They were led by John White, a gifted watercolor artist, a meticulous surveyor, and a man who had already visited this coastline twice. His daughter Eleanor was among the colonists. She was pregnant. The plan, formally approved by Sir Walter Raleigh and written into the expedition charter dated January 7, 1587, was to establish England's first permanent New World colony not at Roanoke, but further north, at Chesapeake Bay. Raleigh had chosen the Chesapeake after the first Roanoke attempt failed in 1586 due to hostile relations with neighboring tribes and a near-total collapse of supplies. Roanoke Island had no natural harbor. It was exposed, low on resources, and politically complicated. Chesapeake Bay was the intended home of what Raleigh's charter called the City of Raleigh. That part of the plan matters. I will come back to it. On August 18, 1587, 27 days after arriving, Eleanor White Dare gave birth to a daughter. They named her Virginia. Virginia Dare, the first English child born on American soil. She was baptized 6 days later by her grandfather, the governor of the colony, in a ceremony on an island that was already running critically low on food. 9 days after Virginia's birth, on August 27, 1587, John White sailed back to England. The colonists asked him to go. They needed supplies. He did not want to leave his daughter and his 9-day-old granddaughter on an island 3,000 miles from home, and the historical record is clear that the colonists had to persuade him to leave. But they needed him. He was the governor. He was England's representative. He was the man Raleigh would listen to. Before White left, he and the colonists agreed on a code. If they had to relocate while he was away, they would carve their destination into a prominent tree or post, just the name of the place. But if they moved under duress, under attack and fear of violence, they were to carve a Maltese cross above the name. The cross meant danger. No cross meant choice. It was a simple, prearranged system. It was the only way a man leaving his granddaughter behind could maintain any sense of what might happen in his absence. White arrived in England in November 1587, walked into a country preparing for war with Spain, and did not return to Roanoke for 3 years. He tried. He mounted an attempt in 1588. It failed before it reached open water. The English crown had commandeered every capable vessel to face the Armada. He organized another effort in 1589. It also failed. The colony sat alone for 36 months with no resupply, no communication, no governor, and no support from the nation that had sent them there. John White finally set foot on Roanoke Island on August 18, 1590. It was Virginia Dare's 3rd birthday. The settlement was empty. The houses had been carefully dismantled, not ransacked, not burned, not torn apart by violence. Dismantled. The timber had been taken. A palisade of logs had been constructed around the perimeter. On one of the main posts, carved in clean capital letters, was the word Croatoan. On a nearby tree, the letters C-R-O. White searched the site. He found his own buried personal trunks, filled with armor, books, maps, and writing, dug up, pilfered, and scattered. He found no bodies, no graves, no sign of battle. And critically, he found no cross. Not above Croatoan, not above C-R-O. Neither carving had a cross. This is where most people telling this story get it wrong. They say the word Croatoan points to Croatoan Island, the home of the friendly Algonquin tribe led by Manteo, a Native American man who had traveled to London in 1584 and developed a working relationship with White. The carving, they say, was a message. We went to our friends. Mystery solved. They assimilated. They survived. Case closed. Reasonable, except for one detail. If White genuinely believed the colonists had voluntarily relocated to Croatoan Island, a place he knew, where he had personal allies, where his daughter and granddaughter were likely alive, he should have sailed there immediately. It was 50 miles. He was already at sea. He didn't. A storm arose. His ships lost anchors. The captain said the season was too dangerous to continue. And White, a man who had crossed the Atlantic 3 times, who had spent years petitioning for this single return voyage, who had a living child and grandchild he had not seen in 3 years, agreed to turn back. He returned to England. He never organized another expedition. He never set foot in America again. His last known written document, a letter from 1593, describes the loss of the colonists as resulting from the evils and unfortunate events caused by others. Not nature, not storms, others. He died in 1593. He never found Virginia Dare. Now I want to walk you through several things that happened around this voyage, because individually, each one has a reasonable explanation, and together they describe a pattern that I have not been able to fully account for. The first is Simon Fernandez. He was the Portuguese-born pilot of the fleet, the man who physically controlled the ships. The documented plan, written by Raleigh, was for Fernandez to deliver the colonists to Chesapeake Bay. In mid-August 1587, after stopping at Roanoke to pick up a small garrison left by the previous expedition, Fernandez ordered all 117 colonists off the ship and refused to take them any further north. His stated reason was that summer was ending, and he needed to reach the Caribbean to pursue Spanish shipping. He was a licensed privateer. The colonists' welfare was not his primary obligation. 117 people, among them women, elderly men, Eleanor Dare 9 months pregnant, were deposited on a failed colonial site, at the wrong location, in the wrong season, by the one man who had the power to take them where they needed to go. Each step has an explanation. Together, it meant the colony began already stranded, already behind, already without the harbor and resources Raleigh's plan had depended on. The second thing is the hidden symbol on White's map. In early 2012, Brent Lane, an adjunct professor at the University of North Carolina's Keenan Institute and a member of the First Colony Foundation, was studying White's La Virginia pars when he noticed the northern paper patch had no visible correction drawn on top of it. It was blank. There was no reason for it to exist. He contacted the British Museum on February 23rd and had his answer on February 24th. Curator Kim Sloan and paper conservator Alice Rugheimer placed the map on a lightbox. Beneath the blank northern patch, at the location where the Chowan and Roanoke rivers converge in present-day Bertie County, North Carolina, approximately 50 miles inland from Roanoke Island, was a carefully rendered symbol of a fortification, drawn by John White, covered by John White. The British Museum confirmed the pigments in the hidden symbol were consistent with the map's original 1585 to 86 production period. This was not added later. White drew that fort symbol during the original mapping expedition, then covered it with a blank patch before the map was presented to Raleigh, and presumably to Queen Elizabeth I. James Horne, then of colonial Williamsburg and the author of A Kingdom Strange, The Brief and Tragic History of the Lost Colony of Roanoke, stated directly, "The discovery of a symbol seemingly representing a fort where the Roanoke and Chowan rivers meet provides dramatic confirmation of the colonists' interest in exploring the interior." And White himself had written in 1587 that the colonists were planning to move 50 miles into the Main if they had to relocate. 50 miles inland. The hidden symbol sits approximately 50 miles inland. The third thing is Site X. In 2007, 5 years before the map discovery was made public, archaeologist Nicholas Lucchetti of the James River Institute for Archaeology excavated a site at the confluence of Salmon Creek and the Chowan River in Bertie County, North Carolina. He found European ceramic artifacts, Surrey, Hampshire borderware, ball clay tobacco pipe stems dated to the late 16th century. The First Colony Foundation's multi-year analysis, published by the University of North Carolina Press, concluded that these artifacts could not be attributed to any other documented source. Their interpretation, the most plausible explanation, is that these are the material remains of colonists from Roanoke who settled there after leaving the island. There are now 2 such sites in Bertie County, Site X and Site Y, both near Salmon Creek, both yielding similar European material culture from the same period. The First Colony Foundation has stated plainly, both sites are where the 1587 colonists told John White they were heading. The fourth thing is a report from Jamestown. In 1612, William Strachey, the official secretary of the Jamestown colony, wrote The History of Travaile into Virginia, Britannia, an administrative document intended for the English government. In it, he recorded that 4 Englishmen, 2 boys, and 1 maid had reportedly been seen at the inland Eno settlement of Roanoke, under the protection of a chief called Roanoke, near the Cheonokee River, the present-day Chowan River in Bertie County, North Carolina. He also wrote that 2-story stone structures had been built at the native settlements of Peckericannick and Ochanahoan, describing them as English in design. His conclusion was that survivors of the lost colony had lived in that inland area long enough to permanently alter local architecture. This is not fringe documentation. Strachey was an official colonial administrator filing an official account. Let me now address the theory you have most likely already considered, because it deserves a direct answer. The Croatoan theory, that the colonists merged with the Croatoan tribe and their descendants are the modern Lumbee people of North Carolina, is not wrong. It is almost certainly partially correct. Archaeological digs on Hatteras Island, the modern site of ancient Croatoan, have produced real evidence. British archaeologist Mark Horton's excavations uncovered a 16th century gold signet ring traceable to a member of the Roanoke voyages. DNA research through the Lost Colony DNA Project, founded in 2005, has found genetic markers in the Lumbee population that have not yet been fully explained by purely Native American ancestry. There was English presence at Croatoan. The word carved on that post was not meaningless. But here is what the Croatoan-only theory does not account for. It does not account for Strachey's inland report. It does not account for Site X. It does not account for the hidden fort symbol. It does not account for White's decision, despite believing his family was at Croatoan, to not search there. The most defensible conclusion, supported by the full body of current evidence, is the one the First Colony Foundation now states openly. The colonists split. A portion relocated to Croatoan Island. The larger group moved inland, 50 miles, as they had told White they planned to do, to the interior location that White himself had marked on his map and then deliberately covered. They were not lost. They were hidden. The sequence of events actually reads. The 1585-86 expedition maps the Carolina interior and identifies a strategic location at the Chowan-Roanoke River confluence, approximately 50 miles inland. White marks it with a fort symbol on his map and covers it. In January 1587, Raleigh charters the City of Raleigh as a Chesapeake Bay colony. The Roanoke site was never the final plan. On July 22, 1587, Simon Fernandez deposits 117 colonists at Roanoke instead of Chesapeake. On August 18th, Virginia Dare is born. On August 27th, White leaves for England, armed with a secret code and a map bearing a hidden destination. 1588 and 1589. White is blocked from returning by England's war with Spain. August 18th, 1590. White returns to an empty settlement, 2 words, no cross. His ships turn back before he can reach Croatoan Island. White dies in 1593, having never returned. 1607. Jamestown is founded. Rumors of Roanoke survivors circulating among English colonists are documented. 1612. Strachey records English survivors inland near the Chowan River. 2007. European ceramics from the correct period are excavated in Bertie County at the confluence of Salmon Creek and the Chowan River, matching the geography of White's hidden symbol. February 24, 2012. British Museum curators confirm a fort symbol beneath a blank paper patch on White's 1585-86 map, placed at the exact interior coordinates colonists said they were heading toward. Today, the ground at Site X and Site Y in Bertie County, North Carolina, has yielded European material culture. No graves, no names, no certainty. Not a single one of those 117 people was ever definitively found. There is still a map in the British Museum. You can request to see it. It is catalogued as P&D 1906-050913. The northern patch is still there, glued in place by a man who had drawn something beneath it and then decided to cover it. Whether he covered it to keep England's interior ambitions secret from Spanish intelligence, or because the fort at that location was a contingency plan he did not want made public, or for some other reason entirely, we cannot know. White took that answer with him in 1593. I keep coming back to one thing. William Strachey's 1612 account mentions one maid among the English survivors seen near the Chowan River, kept under the protection of an inland chief. Virginia Dare was born August 18, 1587. In 1612, she would have been 24 years old. I want to be precise here because precision is the only honest tool I have. We have an official colonial report. We have a geographic match. We have a fort symbol on the governor's map pointing to the same location. We have 16th century European artifacts in the same soil. We do not have a name. We do not have a face. We do not have confirmation. But somewhere in the clay-heavy ground of Bertie County, North Carolina, in the same fields that gave up Surrey, Hampshire borderware pottery and worn ceramic fragments from the age of Elizabeth I, there may be the evidence of what became of those 117 people. The question I have not been able to stop asking since the first time I saw a lightbox photograph of that hidden fort symbol on White's map is this: did Virginia Dare grow up? And if the answer is yes, if she lived, if she had children, if her line continued in that inland settlement along the Chowan River, then there is an even quieter question underneath it. Do her descendants know? If this kind of historical investigation is what you come here for, please subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel keep going, and there is more of this work to come. And I want to return to that comment question I asked you at the start, before you knew what I know now. Go back and look at what you wrote. Does it still stand?